We have to wait patiently because StreamYard takes a second to kick in.
Gotcha. And then we post
it shows
a
20 seconds live for me,
somebody.
so I don't know what you're waiting for.
Okay, good stuff.
Shows, yeah, I'm at 20 now live.
Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 211 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the #1 live podcast in Canada. We're recording on January 20th, 2020.
My name is Ian. I'm a hobby farmer and preparedness autiste on Vancouver Island.
Marty, hunter and sport shooter, rural Southern Ontario.
And, oh, fuck. Hold on. Sorry. My name's Matt. All right. My name's Matt. I'm a recovering podcaster full of boogalicious bants, recently living at the forefront of entrepreneurial big igloo construction in Virginia.
As always, my name is Andrew. I'll be your host. I'm a recovering libertarian, a competitive shooter, and a firearms instructor at Ragnarok Tactical. We need your help. No, wait, that's the wrong thing. We'd love to hear your feedback about the show. That's the thing. We'd love to hear your feedback about the show. Please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email the show feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. You can find the show on the internet, Stitcher, iTunes, and possibly other places. I still don't think I have the Spotify thing fixed.
All right, I guess you can find it at other places on the internet, such as the Facebooks or the Instagrams.
We need your help. To support the show, visit patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon. You can get a better quality version of the show for just $1 per episode. The more you pledge, the better the rewards are. Show you're not a communist, buy a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com homepage and follow the link on the right.
All right, it's time for my favorite segment. It's called What Are We Drinking? I'm going to start with Matt. Matt, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Busch Light, as we can see here. Oh, there it is. There. Nope, that way. Anyway,
cameras are
and Virginia
sometimes.
White Lightning. Nice. Don't ask me.
What's the proof on that lightning?
All of it.
I want to say it's like 105. It's over 100.
Wow.
It's just a clear. It's a clear, unaged, obviously Virginia whiskey, corn based, and it's the same distiller that does that guy that was on Moonshiners. It's down out of Culpeper County. It's the distillery is awesome. Anybody comes down to visit, we'll take you. It's that guy from that was on Moonshiners, the same distillery, the one that was like a fireman and stuff. He went legal at some point, so it's real moonshine recipe. It's just, they pay enough theft and etc. to not have their place raided, but it's good shit.
Marty, what are you drinking?
I have the official beer tonight.
What? You're not keto?
No, not right now.
All right, good for you. Enjoy that banquet. Ian, what are you drinking?
A rum hot toddy tonight.
No Daddy Uber?
No Daddy Uber tonight. The young lady has a day off.
All right. The young lady has a day off, and that means you're drinking. I like this.
That's right. Everybody's happy.
I'm happy, and that's what counts. I'm drinking whiskey again, not beer, as the show notes might indicate. I am drinking Crown Royal because Canada, fuck yeah. All right, so...
Are you adding fluoridated water to that, or non-fluoridated water, or...
I am adding non-fluoridated water to that in the form of ice cubes that have run through my Berkey. It takes out all of the impurities, including the things that turn the frickin' frogs gay.
You got to have atrazine-free ice cubes. That's important.
That's right. No atrazine, no tetraethyl lead. Tetraethyl lead? What is it that made all the boomers brain damaged? Tetraethyl lead?
That's probably all the weed and the acid back in the day.
What do they call it? PCD or
PCP.
It's the stuff is that the same stuff that's in the plastic bottles?
BPA?
Yeah, BPA. That gives everybody like cancer and low T. I don't know.
I hope that's not in my water. My water is supposed to just be water.
It probably is.
In this case, my water is in the form of frozen cubes.
Could do rainwater.
Right.
But even then, you're probably fucked anyway. or screwed. Sorry, I don't know what we do on this podcast.
I mean,
I promised Andrew I
this
was
is
going to be
basically
like, I was going to be considerate of his format, so I'm going to try.
and I appreciate that. So, I guess for people that are new to the show, Matt's been on before. Matt used to do a podcast. You want to tell us about that podcast you used to do and why you're here?
I used to do a
before you had all the
podcast that was
contempt for the
questionably
listeners?
legal at points.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
allegedly.
it was question. We had some episodes that where we had to actually censor things due to legalities, but overall, I feel like it was a good podcast. It was called the International Liberty or Death Podcast. I did it with a Canadian up there, and we focused a lot on the notions of liberty and some current events, and also just ruminating on life and how we're impacted by it, and what our thoughts were on like the decline of Western civilization in general is how I would describe it. Don't really do it much anymore because we both have like young families that we're really trying to not shelter like some libtard would, but just protect from the cloud of I'm trying to think of a way to say it that's appropriate for this podcast, but just trying to shelter from the ever declining Western civilization.
Global
and so we don't
homo,
have
that's
much
what
time
we
to do
call
a
it.
podcast anymore. Yeah, global homo, gay ops, whatever you want to call it. But I say that as a libertarian that generally doesn't care what you do in your own time. But that's what we call the big notion of it. Long story short, did this podcast, know all these guys, have been on CPP a few times here and there, kind of a little voice helicoptering in from the States, usually saying inappropriate things that I think at some point could get me arrested in Canada, maybe not, especially about the natives and like their
It's only
and things
a hate
about
crime if you're in
ditches.
the country when you say
and
it.
boom, so then I'm good. And overall, I know a lot of these guys, and I consider a lot of them family just because we have the same value system, and I'll get into that as I go through what happened in Virginia. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I'm not just a stranger here to the podcast, but I'm also not like a regular. So some of you guys that might not know me, some of you guys that listen might know me from some of the charity shoots I've been up there the past few years. I might be kind of a regular face to some of y'all, but long story short, with what Canada's facing now and with what we're facing here in Virginia and other states, I just think we have to stick together, and podcasts like this are the perfect opportunity to do so. So
Super. And you are currently hailing from the once great state of Virginia?
yeah, the Old Dominion, as they say.
All right. So I wanted to
Robert
have
E.
you on
Lee and General Jackson, Stonewall Jackson.
I wanted to get you on to compare and contrast some of the things that are going on in Virginia right now with your Second Amendment and what we're likely going to be facing in Canada in the coming year with our newly minted, re-elected Liberal government. So do you want to tell us the current state of your Second Amendment rights in Virginia and what your blackface-wearing governor is up to?
Yeah. So Virginia, this past election in the end of 2019, the end of 2020. So the new government here is full Democrat, which is our left. The state Senate, like delegates or I don't know how you would describe that, but the representatives and the governor are all Democrats, are all liberals. And they didn't run on these really on their platforms, on their campaigns, but as soon as they got elected, all of a sudden it came out of nowhere. There's all these anti-gun, gun control bills they're all passing related to everything you could imagine about firearms.
I can imagine a lot of things about firearms. So I'm going to briefly flip over to the NRA ILA article with 3 of your bills. So they were making gun-free zones in public buildings, parks, and permitted events.
So Yeah.
That's-
So
That's one of your bills. You've
the
also got a bill
main
for,
the main bills essentially that they're passing. Well, something just shit the bed. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine,
Yeah.
buddy. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's like kind of froze on the screens for a second. I can turn my video off for a second because I just saw Andrew froze like this. Like,
Just waiting on you. No problem.
all right, let me explain it. So the main bills. I'll turn my video off for a second. Fuck. The main bills that they passed were red flag laws, which are a nightmare, and the bill, for all intents and purposes, makes it like easy for somebody to call you in for no reason at all, and cops show up at your house and take your guns without a warrant and without probable cause for any other crimes or anything else. It's just on somebody else's word that you're a threat. Another bill that they passed was you can only buy one handgun a month. And then another bill that they passed had to do with universal background checks, and applying, because anytime you buy a gun in the States, you still go through a national criminal background check that goes through the FBI, Department of Justice, and you have to fill out paperwork. And if you're in any of the like criminal databases, you can't buy a damn gun. So we already have full background checks. It's a big misnomer in the media that we need more background checks, that it's easy to just buy a gun. The only thing you don't necessarily have a background check is when it's a private to private sale. And so that's what they're trying to apply it to. The law is trying to say that you need to have a background check when you sell privately from one person to another. And they're trying to say now you have to like go to an FFL, a licensed firearm dealer, and have them run a background check to be able to sell them that gun. They're trying to say the only exception to that could be like an immediate family member. And so the law is not even that clear yet, because maybe it would still apply to family members, to where if I'm not even sold, but like, let's say I bought a gun for my son and I said, hey, you've got to give me some money, for this gun for turkey hunting, then I'd have to go to a store and have them run a criminal background check on my own child, like to be able to give them that gun if there was an exchange of money. It's a nightmare. The law is unclear. It's bullshit. The last thing that is coming out of the House in Virginia is the big one, and that's a full ban on semi-automatic rifles, semi-automatic pistols, any semi-automatic firearm that can hold a magazine, a detachable magazine that holds over 10 rounds, and magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. It also bans semi-automatic rifles that have various features to them related to pistol grip, all that basic crap that they have passed in New York and California. Pistol grip, foregrip, detachable features, etc. And then it also says if you own something like that, if they pass that law, goes into effect in July, you have until January of 2021 to get in compliance with the law. And if not, you're a Class 6 felon, which is like a huge felony. That's years in fucking prison. And you can either get rid of the gun, destroy the gun, give it, not sell it, but give it back to the government, or you can register it and request a permit for it. It's not a shall issue permit. You can request a permit for it. And then if you get a permit, you have to register like your address, name, your height, your weight, your all kinds of shit. And then every time you go to the range and go anywhere, you have to notify the local law enforcement of what you're doing. And this is, so I understand the degrees of licensure in Canada when it comes to restricteds and non-restricteds. But for us, like, my AR is completely non-restricted, nothing. So like I can walk down the street with it, as long as I'm not quote unquote brandishing it, there's no crime, right? Like with 30 round mags and everything. So this is a huge change for us. And that's in effect, those are the main laws that they're trying to pass. And the big one, like I said, that ban in Virginia itself, like the main estimate that we have is roughly between 500,000 and 800,000 semi-automatic rifles are in private ownership. I'm not even getting into semi-automatic pistols that would be affected by this law. And so 500,000 to 800,000 firearms, you multiply that out by their value, you're talking $500 million to $700-800 million worth of private property value. This government wants to ban and force you to register. And once you register as well, you can't transfer them to your kids or anything. So it still takes away the value. So that's the crux of the reason that we had this huge demonstration here in Virginia today. And to give a little bit of like insight to, gun crime in Virginia, like the FBI in 2018, there was about, I think the number was 8 deaths by rifle in 2018. And there was, by firearm, there was maybe 300 tops death by firearm in Virginia in 2018. And we have a population of about 8.5 million. And when you do the numbers, you're talking about 99.996 or 7 or 99.998. There's a fraction of a percent of these legally owned semi-automatic firearms that have ever been used in a homicide. And that's the overreach that we're pushing back against on our state government. And the biggest problem with these laws is that they're irrationally enacted due to people that are ignorant and that fear things that they don't know anything about. And so that's kind of what's going on in Virginia. The big difference, and this is what I'll finish my, the Virginia stuff on, like my train of thought, is that Virginia is known as the Old Dominion. If I don't know how familiar everybody is with Civil War history. If you go back, that's where a lot of the main battles of the United States Civil War happened. Most of the very famous generals in the Civil War, especially for the Confederacy, Virginia was a capital of the Confederacy, was in Richmond, Virginia. Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Longstreet, Armistead, all these famous generals fought for Virginia and the Confederacy, and they fought against encroachment, against states' rights. And there's a lot of history with the state. The flag itself, the motto is Sic Semper Tyrannis, and it's got a picture of like Lady Liberty with her foot on a dead tyrant holding a sword and a spear. And like, that's our state flag. So the fact that all this is happening in Virginia, the outcome's not going to be the same as it was in other states where there's a huge population of people that, are anti-gun and stuff like that. Like the culture of this state is rooted in resistance to tyranny and independence and freedom. So that's the background that we're working with. And today, the end result of all that stuff was a huge rally. Normally it's called a lobbying day, where this Virginia pro firearm group goes and lobbies their Congress and Senate, and they talk about firearm laws, and they just have a peaceful thing. It's been doing it for years. But this year, because of all these things that the Democrats are trying to push on us, it became a rally, and people came from Texas, Tennessee, South Carolina, all over the country, and Virginia, and they assembled peacefully. There's anywhere from I just saw an article, or not an article, but a letter from a police officer that was working the rally that said their personal intelligence said there was 100 to 300,000 armed people outside of the State House grounds, and the people that went into the fence that they put up because the governor set up in a state of emergency was anywhere from like 12 to 20 something thousand. And they expected, they made a state of emergency because they thought there would be chaos and, you know, shootings and all kinds of stuff. And literally nothing happened. Like there was no violence, nothing like that. And it just shows you that, you know, the law-abiding citizen that believes in firearms and that believes that firearms are there to protect their natural rights is not out there to start a fight, not out there to, you know, create violence or to aggress on other people. They just want to be left alone and want their neighbors to be left alone. But if you try to take away their firearms and their rights to be left alone, or their means of defending their ability to be left alone, they're going to come and start telling you that's not okay, and they're going to protest, and they're going to do a quote-unquote show of force. That just means like protesting and rallying. And if push comes to shove, they're going to, you know, organize within their counties and their local groups, and if it has to happen, they'll fight back, and we will fight back if it has to come to it. I hope it doesn't, and I don't think it will. I hope that public opinion sways enough to avoid that, but in this state, especially in this country, if they push too hard and they start literally aggressing on people, like if you hear about somebody, you know, in the media, like another Ruby Ridge or Waco, that's it. That'll be the second American Civil War, guaranteed. So anyway, that's that in a nutshell.
That's a really excellent summary. I have a follow-up question from a Canadian perspective on this. This is on CP24, so this is the Toronto 24/7 news station. Their headline on their earlier today, I don't know the exact time, but this was on the news this morning. And it read, mix of militias, firearms advocates, and white supremacists attending gun rights rally in Virginia today. Is there truth to any of that? Or is there a lot of white supremacists? For our audio listeners,
between the people I know that were there, there's no white supremacists that anybody saw. And even if they're like,
so
first
you're
of all,
saying just by virtue of having guns does not make them white supremacists?
Not just that, but the whole white supremacist narrative was a specific narrative by the governor, because to try to paint this as a illegitimate thing,
right?
That wears blackface. Well, he didn't admit to what he did. He was either in blackface or in a Ku Klux Klan outfit in his yearbook. One of the two. He didn't admit to which one he was. But, you know, like you could see, I could show you all kinds of pictures. There's no way it was white nationalists. There was like trans for guns, anti-racist for guns. You know, none of that's true. They tried to do that as a scare tactic because of what happened in Charlottesville like a couple years ago, when Antifa and the white nationalists or alt-right dudes had a rally and some questionably close to death obese woman got ran over by a car. That could have been self-defense. Like allegedly got ran over. I mean, but all I'm saying is they're trying to build a narrative of fear around the whole thing.
No, I get that. That's why I wanted to draw.
There was nobody there. There's like,
no, there was.
The crowd was actually like very boomer.
Yeah, there was a group of Black Panthers there. Is that the white supremacists that they're talking about?
Must have been.
I particularly enjoyed the Asian minorities that held up signs saying that it's harder to take away the rights of armed minorities. That entertained me.
Well, also the fact that today is Martin Luther King Day in the States, right? And so they got a civil rights memorial in the same square as the protest, and they're literally caging civilians in and taking away their Second Amendment rights.
Yeah,
and everything else. Like, is that the irony? Not just
arguably their First Amendment rights as well, if there's a designated free speech cage.
Oh, absolutely, the freedom cages. I do believe they're referring to them as. And so, the whole thing was rife with irony. And like I said, the governor that wears blackface and or the KKK outfit, not sure which, but I don't think the problem was on the libertarian / right wing end. I think it was more on the other end. But the good news is that
but even then, like, yeah.
Well, maybe the government is indeed afraid of an armed
No
population.
violence.
If the first thing they did is say no guns allowed, maybe they are indeed afraid of an armed population.
Well, some of them are. There was also in the crowd, out in the open in the crowd, unprotected, without armed security, was a female state senator. Amanda Chase was out with the crowd. She didn't feel threatened by him. I wonder why. The only people that feel threatened by an armed populace are people that have ulterior motives and bad intentions for that populace. Bottom line.
Yeah. No, she's on the right side of the history for sure, because I mean, even her putting out that warning about them trying to instigate problems a few days ago, I think she put out a warning, right? So.
Yep.
Now, the other thing I saw with this that's come up lately is a large number of counties, the majority of counties in Virginia, have decided to declare themselves as Second Amendment sanctuaries. Have you read about that, Matt?
Yeah, it's over 100 counties. It's about 98% of the state has declared itself Second Amendment sanctuary. And there's sheriffs that have come out publicly stating that they're Second Amendment sanctuaries, that if they pass these laws, they will literally deputize thousands of people in their county. And there's also, I'm not going to say the specifics, but even counties that I know of personally, that I may allegedly live in, that there's plans within the sheriff's department to deputize and create constitutional, and there are laws in the state constitution of Virginia and the American Constitution for the irregular militia. And there's already been conversations about that. And so to finish this train of thought about the whole reaction of what's next, because that's kind of what a lot of people might wonder, what's after this rally, what's next? If they pass these laws in our country, it is codified in the U.S. Code, in actual federal law. The irregular militia in this country is all able-bodied men between the ages, I believe it's 18 and 45 or 35 or 65. I think it's actually higher. I think it's 65. So I didn't double check that, but it is all able-bodied men between basically most ages of being able-bodied, obviously, that are citizens of this country are considered the irregular militia. So all the arguments about, the Second Amendment only applies to the militia, all men are the fucking militia, bottom line, And so people, especially in Virginia, a lot of people talk about memes and look at shit on the internet and see these boogaloo memes and all this shit and Hawaiian shirts, but people in Virginia, I'm trying to keep OPSEC and stuff, but people aren't joking around. And the one thing that happens, and I think a lot of people forget this, is the kind of rally that happened today. Most law-abiding gun owners and most conservatives, they have successful jobs because they don't rely on other people for their well-being. They have successful jobs because they have work ethic, they have families, they have lives, and they have responsibilities that they care about and they uphold. And when you start facing laws that are going to impact your Second Amendment rights, everybody's facing these, these thoughts, these decisions that you may have to one day make of what is my limitation? Because I don't want to be violent. I don't want to get involved in anything. But at the same time, I believe my way of life is directly being threatened with force, which is what these laws are. I mean, any gun control law is a threat of force against people that own those guns. And it's, from a personal level, it's really interesting when you start having to actually think out life altering decisions when you're really happy with your life and your family, and you've never hurt other people, and you don't even care about hurting other people. Like, you just want to like raise a family, and like these people like want to make you a felon just because of property you own that you've never hurt anybody else with. And you're like, just have to start thinking out, like, am I gonna give in and just be like, well, you can have my property, and even though it's against what make this country like great, or am I going to do something about it? And it's really weird to be put in that position. So I wonder how it feels for you guys in Canada too, because you're facing some of the same type of shit from your Liberal government.
I don't foresee us having a case where we have 2,000 or 20,000 or 300,000 people showing up at any level of our government protest. Certainly not armed, because our version of the Alphabet Boys, the Queen's Cowboys, would immediately come and arrest us all.
Well, they tried protests back in the 90s, and unarmed, peaceful, on Parliament Hill. And the first thing the Queen's Cowboys did is have snipers up on the roof, ready to start taking out anybody that even raised their voice. So that was our previous big round of gun control laws that went through. So much more authoritarian here, obviously because of the split in the history between staying with the British and leaving them, right? We don't have the rights enshrined that you guys do either. They're more privileges, although that's for debate because I think they're rights, but can't legislate human rights. But anyway,
agreed.
I don't foresee us having a large.
It's a tough spot to be in, man.
It is, and I don't think we're going to see. I think we might see some pushback on some of the provincial and municipal bans that we've talked about. So the current Liberal government has alluded to the fact that they may allow municipalities to ban the ownership of handguns within that municipality, which is currently a federally regulated thing. Right now, handguns are regulated federally, but if they make this a municipal thing, they have to give some power to the individual provinces before they can pass that on to the individual municipality. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, and we'll talk about Ontario later, the premiers of those three provinces have already come out saying that they're not going to give municipalities the ability to regulate handguns. Handguns are already heavily regulated in this province. We don't need cities to say that you can't keep a handgun here. Because unlike in America, we can't walk around with them. We can't take them. We can't use them for personal defense. We can take them to the range, provided we have the appropriate paperwork, and we can shoot cardboard targets with them. I don't see a lot of people getting up in arms in that, because a lot of the Toronto people will no doubt cheer for the ban of handguns, thinking that it'll somehow make their violent city that much safer. I also don't think we're going to see big rallies the same way that we did in the 90s.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, man.
Well, and the thing that gets me that's a difference between Canada and the U.S., at least when it comes to firearms, you can have 50,000 people show up to a state legislature in a state that has 8 million people. We can't get a couple 100,000 people to sign an e-petition.
Yeah, out of 2 million gun owners, and how we at 90,000 now.
Well, and that's part of the problem that I see here. Yeah. So, like, the population of Virginia is 8 million. You had, call it 100,000 people show up to this rally. We have 30 million people in the country. Yep. 2.2 million of them have firearms licenses. We can't get 100,000 of them to sign an e-petition to ask the government to not use orders in council to undemocratically ban certain firearms, because that's what we're currently facing is an undemocratic ban. They're going to, or at least Bill Blair has alluded to the fact that they're planning to.
You can't get 100,000 people to sign a petition asking them to use the parliamentary process of which they have a majority and can do whatever they want.
Right. And this is like the draconian dictatorship that we face. Is like they have a majority and they can ram this through anyway, and they still refuse to ram it through. So they're going to skirt work. Yeah, they're going to skirt the parliamentary system that we have and just use an executive dictate to ban guns, certain types of firearms. I mean, I think if they got their way, they'd just use orders in council to ban all guns, but I feel like that boils the frog a little too quickly. I am disappointed about that e-petition. We've talked about that on the show before. I'm going to call it e-petition 1234, but that's not really its number. It's those numbers, not that order. I never remember the order.
2341.
Good enough. 2341. We broke 90,000 signatures. Huzzah! I'm deeply ashamed for my fellow gun owners.
Yeah. So what's the next step with that? With you guys? I mean, I know I kind of went into our next steps. Like, we actually, I mean, like I said, OBSEC, but like we have, there's the best way I want to describe it is people should look up the OODA loop, which talks, it's a
Observe, orient,
strategic
decide,
theory
and act.
that's has to do with military strategy.
Yeah, we talked about it on a podcast a couple weeks ago.
Basically. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean,
short circuit that.
Like, people here do not want to fight, but if the state the first aggression at this point that the state makes, if they pass these laws and they actually try to enact them somewhere, there's going to be blood, and it's not going to just be citizens' blood. And that's not a threat for me, I'm just talking about looking at the entire situation from a observational standpoint, from a, honestly, a journalistic standpoint in some regards. Like, people here are like, and I say people, I just mean like Americans, and especially Virginians and Tennesseans and Texans, all these people in South Carolinians, they're not kidding, and I think the biggest difference between us and you guys is when we try to get petitions signed and we try to have rallies, and this isn't like, I'm not trying to say anybody up there are cucks, because I love all of my brothers up there. Like, I really do. And I like, if things got bad enough, I would stand shoulder to shoulder with you. No, for sure. I just mean, I think our benefit goes back to what y'all were saying, is that we left the crown. And that's still it's codified. I mean, our founding fathers were considered tyrants by the crown. Yeah. Like, it's in our DNA, like, as a country here, like rebellion. It really is. I mean, that's why a lot of people hate us. Like, we're considered cowboys, like, and fucking rebels and all this weird shit. Like, but it's kind of true. I mean, like, the wild childs of the Western Hemisphere kind of thing,
I do know. Whereas we're
nothing against anybody up there, but I feel for y'all's fight.
We're a confederation of convenience that primarily exists as a result of the American Civil War. Right? We wouldn't be a country had you not gone to war with the crown. The majority of our English settlers in Upper Canada, what's now Ontario, are people that fled from America during the loyalists who fled the American War of Independence with the crown. And then the Confederation of our country in the War of 1812 was primarily having to do with the American Civil War, because we were afraid that we were going to be invaded by the Americans. Right? This was a byproduct of being a British subject colony at the time and having a vast amount of natural resources. So the fact that the Americans just created a giant standing army, it was in our best interest to confederate at the time. But I've talked about this before. I don't think the Confederation is a meaningful or valuable organization for what is at least 4 distinct national identities in this country.
Yeah.
Well, I hope it doesn't come to war with your own government, but I don't imagine in our country that it will. I think we're going to have a lot of cuckery, the same as it was in '95 when the last major round of gun laws came into effect here. I think we're going to have a lot of people not complying peacefully.
Honestly,
we're going to have a lot of people turning things in.
Yeah, if I was going to predict what could happen here, I was just going to say real quick, if I could predict what could happen here, I think if anything actually started, I think it would be over quickly, because I think the response would be so overwhelming. Like, if there was another Ruby Ridge, with technology these days, the word would get out so quickly. Like, it would be so violent and so quick. All of a sudden, like, it wouldn't be riots in LA and people storming stores for shoes. It would be like all of a sudden there'd be like, you know, well, I don't want to get into it because I don't want to be accused of threatening people, but like it would be so violent and grotesque, and it would be so irregular war.
Building. Yeah,
they'd be begging for the for calm in the streets.
Yeah, not just or. Yeah, well, I mean, and I talk to people about this, and I don't have plans for any of this, and this is a disclaimer but when you look at in history, like irregular warfare is not pretty. It's not going to be blue coats versus red coats. It's going to be people's families getting like just fucking killed in the middle of the night. You know what I'm saying? It's going to be raids against law-abiding citizens in the middle of the night because they have a 30-round magazine and somebody called a red flag law on them. And then all of a sudden there's going to be a response from militia units in the area and the sheriff's department in the area. And then those militia units, I mean, look at what the troubles in Ireland. The sheriffs, like the response isn't going to be, oh, we're going to have a pitched battle with the cops that raided this guy's house. It's going to be like their entire family is going to be fucking murdered in the middle of the night. People are going to like, you know what I'm saying? It's going to be like, nobody wants that. Like, women and children will not be off limits in a civil war, in a gruesome civil war. You look at the past like few decades of places where it actually happens, fucking all over the Middle East, Ireland, everywhere. There's going to be bombings and fucking bloody warfare, and civilians and all kinds of like people that don't deserve to die are going to die. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wants that to happen. It's like, the Boogaloo memes are pretty cool and they're funny and they make you chuckle and they reinforce like the fact that people aren't playing, but nobody actually wants that. But I do think people are prepared for it if like to defend their way of life, and it's
and I think that's
like I said, it makes you think about like, how would you handle it?
Well, I think that's a big difference between what we have here in Canada and what you have in the US is you have tens of thousands of people that are willing to go to war with your government to maintain their rights, and we have tens of thousands of people that can barely sign an e-petition to ask the government to follow our actual democratic processes.
Right, but they're also coming from a society that actually has fought for their rights. They fought and claimed their rights, where we never did.
We haven't, and I think that's a big reason for the dichotomy there.
But maybe you can one day. I mean, every society, every grouping of human beings, there's eventually conflict because humans, it's not natural. I mean, well, that's a philosophical thing, but again, maybe I'm biased because like where I was born and what I learned growing up, but like it's not natural. It's not natural to be controlled. I don't know. Maybe some people think it is.
No, I agree with you.
I don't know. The complacency part I don't understand. And I'm not accusing any of y'all of it.
No, and I think, we're all on watch lists for doing this podcast. But I mean, right now it's just a watch list. Hi, RCMP. But I mean, every
time I go across the border, I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah, I bet. No, I imagine there are people that hold more extreme viewpoints than we have that are not willing to put their names and faces on the internet to say the things that, well, I'll speak for myself, say the things that I say, but are willing to do America-style democracy to enforce their beliefs on their government. I just don't think there's very many of them in this country.
Less than 3% anyway.
Well, 3% does seem to be the tipping point number.
Mm.
You need to make sure that you're prepared for the knife fights and iron sights. Or so some boomer told me. Shall we talk about our lovely crown? we'll shuffle away from Virginia a little bit.
Dude, I want to know more about this. So
we'll pick Matt's brain a little bit. So we're gonna talk
as an American. Yeah, as an American, I want you guys to like tell me the situation, lay it out, and then I'll give you my opinion because I honestly don't even understand the ramifications of all this. All I know is like the prince or former prince or whatever, and is she from America or Canada? I don't know.
Yes.
They apparently are not. They don't have titles anymore. So if y'all can lay it out for me, I'm all ears.
So first article's on dailymail.com. This is a UK news publication. Canada offers to pick up Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's £500 security bill while the couple are in country. I would do the other headline and then I would come back to that because clarifying statements are required. This is on the Globe and Mail. This is one of the largest news publications in Canada. This is an editorial that was published late last week. Harry and Meghan and why members of the royal family can't live in Canada. Okay, so His formerly Royal Highness Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, and his wife, the divorced Canadian-American mulatto actress Meghan Markle, famous for her role on Suits and probably something else. I don't know what else she's been in. That's the only thing that seems to come up in any of the news that I read. So Meghan Markle is of Vancouveran descent. Is that right, Ian? She's from your neck of the woods?
Yeah.
But she primarily is an American actress at this point.
Yeah.
And somehow tricked a prince into marrying her divorced ass.
Yeah, her mom lives in LA, so I guess she's got the right to live down there as well or something. But, well, first of all, you got to remember everything we've learned about these people, we didn't ask to learn about it. We were just told about it in the papers because for some reason, some people feel it's newspaper worthy. Personally, I couldn't care less. But
okay, so the thing that I want to clarify with this is Canada didn't offer to pick up their tab. Our idiot prime minister offered to do this, and £500 is $750,000 Canadian, give or take.
Yeah, no, it's basically
peanuts.
Yeah, it's a fair amount.
So Prince Harry is the 6th in line for the throne of England. Canada is a constitutional monarchy. The head of our government is the Queen of England. Why is the Queen of England the head of our government? Great question. I'm glad you asked. There's not a clear reason. Unlike the Americans who ceded from the crown through the War of Independence, we asked very politely several times in 1867, 1913, and 1982 if we could please have a little bit more of autonomy and also pass the tea. Unlike the Americans who said, we're throwing your fucking tea in the harbor, get out, and then shot the British. We had a slightly more nuanced approach.
And then we're going to shoot you. Yeah.
So I guess since their marriage and the birth of their child, I think the little man Archie, I don't know. I don't think he's a prince. I don't think it counts because it's hereditary, but not like that. The future Duke of Sussex, I guess not anymore. Anyway, Markle gave birth to their son about 8 months ago. They have had a falling out with the Queen and the rest of the royal family, and they have decided to abdicate their professional responsibilities as senior royals, which is a mostly for show position they have with the royal family, where they carry out acts of head of state for the Commonwealth countries, which includes Britain and Canada. Britain obviously being their home country, other Commonwealth countries, New Zealand, Australia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Bahamas, Bermuda, so on and so forth. I think there's a couple in Africa, maybe. But a bunch of the West Indies and those other islands where we sent convicts to, and also where we found Kiwis, and Canada for reasons. So as their position with senior royals, they were able to draw a stipend from a public fund that also included their housing, their security, their education for their children, the recent, I think it was £4 million worth of upgrades to the house that they lived in, which they've agreed to pay back now. None of this really matters because the royals in Canada don't actually have a function. Technically, the Queen is the head of our government, but in fact, we have a Governor General who is the Queen's appointed representative in Canada. So after a law goes through our House of Commons and then to our Senate, it goes to the Governor General to be signed into law. And the Governor General is acting on behalf of the Queen. The Governor General has been Canadian since about 1950. Prior to that, it was someone from Britain that was sent to Canada to act as the Queen's representative. And we also have a similar position at each of our provincial governments, which is the Lieutenant Governor. Each province has a Lieutenant Governor, and the process for passing provincial laws is very similar. you have a provincial house, and then it goes through to the governor or the lieutenant governor to be signed into law. So it's a similar process. Parliamentary democracy is not significantly different from Republican democracy that you have. There's an upper and a lower house, a separate judicial system, but the head of our elected representatives is a monarch. So the Queen's on our money. We have the picture of the Queen in our government buildings. The Queen, the royal family, maintains a royal residence in Canada that we as taxpayers pay for, and we also fund the Governor General and other Crown appointees. Does that more or less lay things out?
Well, except for on the day-to-day stuff. So as senior royals, what their job would be like is like opening swimming pools, celebrating the cornerstone of a building, and being there for the opening ceremonies or the first dig of the shovel. They didn't really do a whole lot. There's nothing legislative or official about their duties. It's merely ceremonial for a lot of stuff. So they'd be there for Olympics or whatever.
In terms of what they do in government, technically their representative signs bills into law, but they don't actively participate in our government, and they haven't since 1867.
Yeah,
we keep our royals at arm's length.
But these particular royals, like at this level, like the senior royals, like just that aren't the Queen, they're just there for show. There's nothing really to them. So
we keep them around because they're related to the Queen.
Interesting.
Like total side note, I do really like Harry as a person. I think that his choices in who he decided to marry, because he's a fucking prince, were maybe not the best, because I feel like he could do better than a divorced Hollywood actress, like a B-list Hollywood actress at that. But, I mean, he did serve 10 years in the Army. He did have multiple combat tours to Afghanistan. He was a forward air controller, like a JTAC kind of a role. He did start the Invictus Games, which is like a Paralympics for wounded veterans. He has done a bunch of good things, I think, but I mean, I don't feel like we're at any big loss in Canada if we stop having them as the sixth in line for the throne. There's plenty of other royals, and they all perform effectively the same function. So, like a distinction without a difference, I guess. Because I mean, I kind of like the things the guy has done, but I don't really care if he's got the title of His Royal Highness Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, or not. He can still be a good dude without all of the hereditary heraldry.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah. I don't know. At one point, I kind of like the idea of having a royal family, but I guess I've become more or less libertarian now, because like a monarchy is kind of like the least offensive form of government, but what we have is not really a monarchy. It's just another taxpayer site.
Yeah, it's so hard to fathom. Like, the only reason they're in that position is because of like how they were born.
Yeah,
and I understand, like in our country too, that's most politicians.
Like the Kardashians, because like at least they got famous for their sex tapes and their dad being a lawyer. The British royal family is just the British royal family, because we don't have wars anymore.
Yeah,
because we used to have lots of other British royal families. The House of Windsor is only the current royal family because we haven't had a good war in a couple hundred years in that country.
Yeah. It's so weird to me, man.
Well, the part that's particularly weird is for some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason, our shiniest of ponies, the head of our government, our elected prime minister, the head of our cabinet, has decided that he's going to offer to pick up their bill. So, formerly Prince Harry and Miss Markle have decided that they want to split their time between Vancouver and Los Angeles. Now, they are still royals. They are still entitled to some sort of security by the British government. As foreign heads of state, they would have been accorded some sort of courtesy by the Queen's Cowboys while they were visiting Canada, because that is a thing that happens. Royal visits are a thing, and the Queen's Cowboys do provide close protection details for those heads of state that are visiting the country. But as private individuals, they're not entitled to a lot of those things, and the Brits haven't quite worked out exactly what they're entitled to or not. The Brits don't know, because this isn't like a thing that happens. This is the first occasion that I can think of where a significant royal has abdicated their title?
Other than the time the other royal abdicated the throne for another divorced American back in the 30s, which did happen.
But I mean, like literally 100 years ago, though, right?
Yeah,
like that's
So the funny thing is, as private civilians, if they're well off, like if they've got private income and everything else, and they're millionaires of their own right, any other rich Canadian is not afforded security by the government. So
no, and this is the problem that I have: is our virtue signaling shiny pony has decided to pony up $750,000 of my tax dollars to provide security for his former Royal Highness and his American half American wife. I'm not either or.
There's a more efficient way to do it. They could just not give him an ATC if he really is worried about it, and he could just pack his own heat.
Well, we could just tell them to go to Los Angeles and stay there.
That would be a good way to do it too.
I mean, I'm preferable for that. Why do we
they'd
have
be
to
better
let
off
them into
going
my
to like
country?
Idaho or something.
Well, but I mean, she is ostensibly an actress, so it would stand to reason New York or Los Angeles would be the place that they're going to go.
Yeah, I would recommend them. Like they could have a residence in Utah, and then she could like fly out and work in LA. But,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, to me, he's the type of guy that could easily carry and like protect their shit generally. Because I think most people don't give a fuck. Like,
No,
I don't think they're targets.
People don't go
Well, and that's part
starstruck
of
in Canada generally, and I think if he had his own ATC, he was a gunner on an Apache, I believe, or some sort of attack helicopter. So it's not the guy's not used to squeezing a trigger. So I mean, he can protect himself just fine.
I do find that interesting.
why
One
pay
of the
for it?
articles calls out specific threats against them from
From who?
alt-right, from the alt-right, and possible
Oh my
people that
God.
he's upset during his tours of duty in Afghanistan.
You mean terrorists?
Yeah, terrorists, and also the alt-right.
Yeah. Oh, of course, at both sides. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the alt-right really hates the crown. Maybe the alt-rights are the new Finians.
It's so hilarious. The demon, like the all right, is gonna be like the new like.
Dude, it was in the
Middle
Daily
Eastern
Mail. I
terrorist.
don't know what to tell you. It was in the Daily Mail. There's no substantiation from that. There's no quotes. There's no.
They don't
just
even know what the
literally
alt right
the
is.
alt-right and enemies that he may have made during his combat tours to Afghanistan. It's like
The Daily Mail probably calls like Joe Rogan the alt right, and he's like he's like a liberal podcast host that's still like, doesn't
smokes weed
think
with
trans
Elon Musk.
people should be like lifting weights. Yeah, dude. Like, geez. So I guess my question, honestly, like as an American, is like, how is this such a big deal? Number one, like who actually gives a
Well,
fuck? And
so a
number
lot
two,
of
I mean,
Canadians
granted,
are
I know people in my
royalists.
country care about, like, how is it still a thing? That's my question. How is the royal family still a thing?
well, that's
I think
that's
it's less,
the part
you
that
know.
baffles me, and I
think every year it's less and less of a thing because as we get a little more diverse on a daily basis, you can't tell me a lot of these new Canadians give a flying fatoodle doodle of about the royal family. I mean, honestly, like,
well,
do you think
that's kind of the thing is like.
do you think a person from Somalia that just came over, a few years ago as a land immigrant really cares about the royal family in Britain? Heck no. And we're bringing in 300,000 plus a year. So I'd say as every year that goes by, there's less interest in the royal family because it's certainly not like they're not importing most of the people from the UK.
No, and I think there was a point in
Yeah,
time where we had closer ties to Britain and we had closer ties to the royals. And, like, as someone who grew up as a royalist, I mean, like, I swore an oath of allegiance to Queen and then country. Because that's the way that we swear into our military here, Matt. So, like, you swear allegiance to the Constitution, right? That's how your oath of allegiance goes. Ours is to Queen and then to country.
That's interesting.
Well, and then, like, as a libertarian, I was like, well, monarchy is, like, the least offensive form of government, right? Because at least they have skin in the game, except in our case where they don't. Right? Because, like, our
Like the oath I took was the oath I took was like to the Constitution, and the oath many of those people that were at the rally today took was to the Constitution, which really is to like not any person in general. It's like it's an oath to the system that enshrines or codifies our natural rights, kind of thing. That's what it's supposed to be, right? Like, obviously, a lot of tyrants take that oath and don't abide by it.
We have a different approach to that. I would say in general in Canada, particularly among what the shiniest ponies once called the old stock Canadians, which is a thinly veiled term for the white people that have been here for more than a generation or three. We had a lot of interest in the royal family because of the hereditary ties that they had to our country, because they were supposed to be an example for something to live up to. They were supposed to be better than your average person. They were supposed to be someone to aspire to be like, and they were supposed to exemplify certain moral characteristics. But I think, like Ian said, we have less of those old stock Canadians every day, so I don't think that the Royals are getting the attention that they used to get. And the point that I raised earlier, at this point, it's just one more tax parasite. It's one more thing that I'm funding to the government that I realize that it only costs me like $1.50 on my taxes to fund the Royals every year, but that's $1.50 that I could use for something else. Like, I don't think that we should be paying to maintain a residence here. I don't think we should be paying for royal visits. I don't think we should be sending money back to the royal family in England. I don't think Hudson's Bay Company should have to send them 300 beaver pelts every year, which is a thing that still happens. Our largest department store at one time was a trapping company in what's now Ontario, at the time Upper Canada. And as part of their land lease agreement with the Crown, they have to send a finite number of animal furs back every year, which they still do.
That's hilarious.
Reasons. Well, a lot of our government is special, man.
Just like Treaty Day on the Native Reserves, Treaty Day still happens, and it's $5 to every native on the reserve. What's $5? But it's still part of the original agreement, right? So
that's right, $5.
So what happens next with them? You know, like what happens next?
I don't know. I think they're gonna move, and I think that my prime minister is gonna spend tax dollars to provide security for foreign nationals that have no business receiving federal assistance. I think let's do another one though. We've got I think we should do the Maple Leaf one, and that's probably where I'm going to wrap it up for now, just because we're running a little bit late. Maple Leaf Food boss attacks Trump, pits ethics against shareholder value. This is a business analysis piece in the CBC from Don Pitts. There's comments on the Twitter. Michael McCain, the head of Maple Leaf, took to Twitter after the Iranians allegedly mistakenly shot down a Ukrainian airliner leaving Tehran a few weeks ago, January the 8th, if I'm not mistaken. So, I don't know, Matt, did you have a chance to read through this CBC article? We'll take that as a solid no. So, the CEO of Matt getting put in the hot seat and Matt dropping the call. All right. I was really hoping to hear his take on this, because I figured he'd have a spicy take for us. CEO of Maple Leaf Foods. I guess I should read the tweet so our listeners are all adequately informed. I'll do my best Michael McCain voice here. I'm Michael McCain, CEO of Maple Leaf Foods, and these are personal reflections. I'm very angry, and time isn't making me less angry. A Maple Leaf Food colleague of mine lost his wife and family this week to a needless, irresponsible series of events in Iran. U.S. government leaders, unconstrained by checks, balances, concocted an ill-conceived plan to divert focus from political woes. The world knows Iran is a dangerous state, but the world found a path to contain it. Not perfect by most accounts, it was in the right direction. A narcissist in Washington tears the
Apologies about that. I had
apart.
to piss, and then I accidentally closed out.
Well done. A narcissist in Washington tears world accomplishments apart, destabilizes region. U.S. now unwelcome everywhere in the area, including Iraq. Tensions escalated to feverish pitch. Taking out despicable military leader terrorist ? There are hundreds like him standing next in line. The collateral damage of this irresponsible, dangerous, ill-conceived behavior. 63 Canadians needlessly lost their lives in the crossfire, including the family of one of my Maple Leaf colleagues, his wife, plus 11-year-old son. We are mourning, and I am livid. Michael Caine. Okay, Matt, so you probably missed part of the tweet that I was reading. The Michael Caine.
No, I know, but But so first of all, my first response is okay. So
tweet.
My question is, what are you going to do about it, bitch?
America, fuck yeah,
fuck yeah.
The second question I have, seriously, and I'm not. I'm literally not trying to be funny. Like I'm talking about like big picture world politics here. Like the second question I have is, like that tweet. Do they know why that plane was actually taken down? Because I can give you some ideas without getting into OPSEC.
That's the part that I wanted to unpack a little bit with this, is because this is a very bold, very broad claim to say that a civilian jetliner was caught in the crossfire due to escalated tensions after something with the Americans. And I mean, like, he doesn't come out and say Trump, but the inference that everyone is making is that he's talking about Trump when he's talking about a narcissist in Washington, right? Because we're not talking about like GOP leadership. We're not talking about the Democrats who have been trying to get a war with Iran for the last 8 years, 12 years. How long have we been trying to get a war with Iraq? Like since before Obama got elected. A war with Iran since before Obama got elected.
Yeah.
Right. Like.
Oh yeah.
So we're not talking about GOP leadership. We're not talking about the GOP senators that it's come to light that have tried to leverage leverage the pending impeachment against Trump to get him to do something dumb, which in this case, bombing Iran, or I guess droning an Iranian general. So all of that aside, I'm still not convinced that even if the Americans hadn't droned an Iranian general, that Iran wouldn't have accidentally shot down a civilian jetliner. Because again, conscript army, Soviet-era technology, auto-fire system. Still not convinced that, like, yes, escalated tensions are bad. Escalated tensions with America probably did not make things less likely to go badly. But Iran has accidentally shot down planes before. Iran has probably accidentally on purpose shot down planes before. The Americans have accidentally on purpose shot down planes before. How is this any different?
Well, it's the same thing. So in the last, 2 months, Iran's like seized a tanker, shot down a U.S. drone, all sorts of other random stuff. And now all of a sudden Trump is the only one escalating things. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say that the Iranians are blameless. And yeah, like I said, it was an accident that might have happened anyway. So I don't understand where this guy's coming off.
Well, and the other piece with this is the Iraq thing. That the Americans are not welcome anywhere, including Iraq. I'm sorry, the Iraqi parliament had a plan for weeks, if not months, put to a vote to ask the Americans to go the fuck home. Like, the Iraqi government was at the point where they were ready to ask America to leave. And this went to a vote at the same time that what's Salami's actual name? Qassem Soleimani?
Soleimani, yeah.
Soleimani. At the same time that Soleimani got droned to death, the Iraqi parliament was in session debating whether or not they should vote the Americans out of their country. Like, the Americans weren't welcome there in the first place. The Russians, I guess at the time the Soviets, weren't welcome there before that. And shocking news, in 1890, the Brits weren't particularly welcome in that region of the world either. But British Petroleum made great friends with the Iranians. So
yeah, well,
how is this suddenly like today's politics are suddenly the problem because the Orange Man bad? I mean, I'm not saying Orange Man not bad, but I don't think that Michael Caine's very long-winded tweet with poor punctuation is taking in all of the necessary nuance in the situation.
Well, the whole narrative is predicated upon the notion that that Trudeau has any semblance of legitimacy when it comes to discussing that entire situation. Like, talking about it as a crossfire is nonsense.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like,
Yes,
this is
my country droned a dude, and then Iran shot 2 missiles at our bases. And some people say it was to save face. Some people say it wasn't, and that we just have really good security. And believe me, we have, like, when it comes to cyber shit and when it comes to SIG intelligence, we have fucking shit people doesn't even know about. And so one way or another, we didn't have any major casualties. And if those idiots hadn't shot missiles at the bases in Iraq, whether you agree with us being there in Iraq or not, if they hadn't shot those missiles, they wouldn't have been on high alert for us flying in stealth bombers and cruise missiles and who knows what the fuck else they thought were going to fly. If that's their excuses, that's why they shot down the Ukrainian commercial airliner. So the entire notion of saying, oh, we had anything to do with causing it, to me, I don't buy it. And the fact that there's even people writing articles about it and being able to say that contributed to it just shows that people literally buy into whatever the prime minister says. I watched that press conference live, and the questions that I was like, these guys, the questions they were asking them were so loaded, and like half of these guys, these loaded anti-American questions to the prime minister. And I was just like, where did they get off even insinuating that? They were like, do you think, any of the, like, this had to do with Trump and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what the hell? How is Trump even involved? I get that there was quote unquote Canadians on that jet, but like most of them were Iranian Canadians. You know what I'm saying? And
they were
if you actually look up where, or they were students. And a lot of people don't realize that when it comes to, foreign countries and intelligence operations and all kinds of shit, there's a lot of bad people that might be quote unquote dual citizens, but they might have ulterior motives. So whether the plane went down because the Iranians shot it down on accident, or maybe it went down because there were some bad people on that plane and somebody hacked the transponder to make it look like something, so the Iranians shot it down, I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, the Iranians wouldn't admit to it for a while, which is bad for them because that makes them look like fucking assholes. And the Canadian prime minister tried to blame it on Trump somehow, which just makes him look like some sort of pathetic, it reminds me of the image of him walking around at like the G8 and nobody would even talk to him. And he's like the kid like that gets left out of the circle at the lunch table. It's the same type of shit, man. This whole article pissed me off.
Well, actually, the Albertan brought up a good point here on the live comments too. Is that like this is the same CEO of the company that had the listeria outbreak a year ago or so and killed multiple people with his bad meat products. Man. So
the Albertan, contact me for some sort of a prize. Send me an email, feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. I'm using your YouTube feedback as the show title.
Yeah.
Alternate headline reads, Maple Leaf exec angered over fried salami. Fried salami is this week's show title. Yeah. Well done, sir.
But yeah, because people that live in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones, right? And so this guy's actually physically killed people with his bad management style and or lack of oversight. And then he's sitting there complaining about somebody that likely didn't have a whole lot to do with the accidental shooting down of this airplane. Yeah, kind of.
Right. And I think that it's still worthwhile to point out this dichotomy because I think that I don't know if we have been clear enough. I think I have not been clear enough. I'm having a hard time coming up with the right words to make sentence. Words hard, English bad, Andrew drink. I can be upset and mournful that Iran shot down a plane full of civilians. That is, from any moral perspective, bad.
Yeah.
But I don't have to, I also don't have to feel like we should go to war with Iran over this, which is what my prime minister was insinuating, is that he's going to demand answers, or else. Or else what? We're not going to war with Iran. We're just not. The Americans might be, although for entirely different reasons. And again, I think that's because of the leadership in the House and the Senate forcing the president to do something distasteful and dishonorable, because you shouldn't drone uniformed military officers of foreign countries, because that's a bad look for international diplomacy. And again, I can say that without saying that Soleimani, bad dude, probably deserved to be killed. But am I the person that gets to make the moralistic judgment to drop a bomb on his ass? No. Is the president? No, not in my opinion anyway, because that's not how international diplomacy works. You don't just get to blow up uniformed officers of other countries because you think they're a bad person. I mean, ostensibly you could maybe do it with non-uniformed combatants, because like Geneva Convention and UCMJ don't apply in those situations. So like actual terrorists, you could do that. But the Americans let al-Baghdadi run around the deserts in Afghanistan and Iraq for the better part of 10 years before they tried to blow his ass up. So, like, if the Americans don't want to, like, drop bombs on actual terrorists, I'm not sure that it's a good look to be dropping bombs on, like, uniformed military officers, especially, like, heads of other... Like, dropping the bomb on the head of the the Quds force is the same as bombing the chief of defense staff in Canada. This is not a good look. You shouldn't do that. It's not how you conduct diplomacy. Oh, the Albertan, you need to just come on the show, bud. You got
I might disagree with some of that, but
yeah, the Albertan needs to come on.
I might disagree with only a few parts of that.
Let me read the YouTube comment.
I mean,
and then you can disagree.
There's some people where.
So the Albertan says the only worst thing than the tragedy is the only worst thing than the tragedy is the fake outrage over the tragedy, which is awesome. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead and disagree.
That's the best take I've heard on that. No, I agree with the Albertan. That's the best take I've heard on it. Because that fake outrage, like, first of all, like, Prime Minister is fake as fuck. And I'm not ashamed to call him out on it.
He's so fake, he got a new beard.
For a lot of reasons. Dude, don't get me started on this fucking... Dude, don't get me started on that shit. Like, that's... Oh, fuck. I can't... There's a lot of things I just don't want to say because I don't want to get you guys kicked off of, like, all the platforms. But... Thank you. What I would say is, like, I understand where you're coming from in terms of diplomacy, but, like, really, like, you know, what the guy did to, like, all kinds of Iraqi, Syrian, all kinds of citizens, and what he did pushing the Sunnis in and all this other shit, like, there's a lot. The guy being dead is, like, the world is slightly better because of that. But I do agree when it comes to diplomacy and, like, how things go. I think the whole situation was not at all what we think happened. And I don't have any inside intel. I don't work in intel for everybody out there. Like, I work in other realms. So I don't have any actual real insight to, like, intelligence and what actually happened. I honestly think that, like, somebody else took the dude out and that Trump was, like, caught for a loop because he was in Mar-a-Lago for the holidays and he had to save face and, like, say the Americans did it. That's my guess. That's just a guess. I think somebody else fucking blew his ass up. But that's just my opinion. Now, when it comes to, you know, him dying versus al-Baghdadi, I think Andrew's 100% spot on. If we're going to take the tack that terrorists, guys that are bad people that kill motherfuckers, we're just going to drone them, then be consistent about it and fucking take them out right away. All this game playing and gamesmanship of let some guys live for a while and then fucking kill them when it's, like, politically okay or you think it is, that's all bullshit. Like, warfare is a nasty business and it should be a consistent business. Like, if we're going to war with somebody, you know, it should just be, guess what? We're at war with you. You're going to fucking die. And it shouldn't be, oh, well, we're going to do trade deals with you and do sanctions and blah, blah, blah. And then this one guy from your country that's, like, number 2 in line, oh, we just blew him up. Fuck you. Now, blah, blah, blah. Come to the table and do some some negotiating like that type of shit. That the back and forth tit for tat. I don't like it. I think it's stupid. I think it really confuses the military, in my opinion, and I think it confuses other countries out there. I think if we were consistent with things, if when ISIS came into power, even when Obama was still in office, I think if we were just like, we're going to kill all of you, and then way back with Bush and everybody, when we were like, when Iran started, stuff, if we were just like, you know what, you've got, like, why did we go into Iraq and not Iran? You know what I'm saying? Like, all this stuff should have been handled a long time ago. And that's the problem I have with the whole Middle East scenario, is there's so much other stuff going on with the poppies in Afghanistan and this nonsense back and forth with Iran. And so what happens is you have our country actually doing these quote unquote dronings, whether it's our country or other people. You have people getting executed. You have proxies rising and terrorist attacks and bombings and all this stuff. And then you have like a prime minister of Canada saying, like, in all effect, like threatening people, and like people know nothing's going to happen with that. And it just confuses the entire situation. You know what I mean? Like, if anybody was, if Trudeau was serious about anything, first of all, he'd be giving more than $25,000 to the families. Like, that's the thing that, like, if he wants to be taken serious, like, that's not the response to give $25,000 to the families. He should be giving them a timeline, an ultimatum, and say, Iran, you're going to send Canada, $500,000 per family of the Canadian citizens on the flight within a week. Otherwise, we're going to take out all your missile sites. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to take him serious.
I would like to see him make a military threat like that, because I think the CDS would come down and be like, yeah, we can't. We actually just can't.
They'd be like, hey, Pentagon. Hey,
right. So that's what I mean. So, like,
can you guys do something for us?
Our chief of defense staff would have to go to the prime minister and be like, yeah, no, we actually just can't do that. We don't have the capability. I think we should.
I don't know, man. I mean, yeah, we can leave it. I mean, I'm just reading a couple of more of the comments here real quick, so I want to help address some of these guys.
Yeah. Why don't you read some comments?
Crazy desert terrorists do all look the same.
I'm gonna read the TACOM promo, and then we can do the outro. And if you have any other listener comments you want to read out, I'm cool with that. So TACOM Canada 20.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people. I think
give her, man, do it.
Keep going.
All right, TACOM Canada 2020, September 11 to 13. The Canadian Pro Gun Podcasters Network will be in attendance at TACOM 2020. Your favorite podcasters will be on hand throughout the show, so make sure you stop by the booth, meet your favorites, and pick up some swag. Or drop by while we do our special live broadcast, where we'll be talking to event organizers, guest speakers, and vendors about all the new and must-have products. You can see details for the show at www.tacomcanada.com, and stay tuned for ticket release details. Ian, you cringed very hard. I read the copy the way it's written.
It's not written like that anymore. Come on.
It said podcasters is in the first copy, and it says podcasters is forever.
It's just like Podcart.
It is completely unlike a Podcart.
Yeah.
Those are only available in New Brunswick.
Yeah. One trophy with a misspell. That's it.
Every trophy with a misspell, but here we are. Matt, did you have any
well,
other
the only misstep I've seen is your prime minister trying to fucking yeah, real quick. I think Canada's response is emblematic of, like, the fact that your prime minister is literally completely ineffective on the world stage. And I don't mean that because of, like, he's with one party or another. I just mean that, like, because of the person he is. I think it's a shame because the Canadians I know are so intelligent and so capable of rational thinking and so aware of their rights and also like the global, basically just like what's happening on a global stage. And this prime minister is literally just out there completely influenced and just completely doing talking points given to him and completely ineffectual and completely unaware of like his actual position. Like he is the cuck of the world, of the Western world right now. And it's a shame when you see him responding to these events and nothing, everybody knows, like people just dismiss it. And it's a shame because I consider Canadians my brothers and sisters, and regardless of if you like Trump or not, like if he says like we've got 52 sites lined up, and if you fucking kill any of our people, like guess what? It's coming. You know, it's gonna happen. Like, you know what I mean? So I just think hopefully you get your government dissolved so that you can get a different prime minister in there, and like we can kind of work together on a lot of this crap. But who knows?
I'd like to see a different government. Me. Let's find.
I'd like to see a different populace though first. Like we need our populace needs to actually start caring about these things, which will then lead to us getting better elected officials.
You're likely not wrong, Marty, but I don't see it happening. We're importing people that are diametrically opposed to old stock Canadians' way of life. You know, yep. Leave me alone and don't make me pay all my money in taxes.
Yeah.
Right. Because
so,
I mean,
I don't disagree, and that's basically where we're at. Like I have very little hope in our society making it through another 20 years.
I know, but the option of armed revolution is also not very appealing.
No, it just means that the capable, like what we've seen in pretty well any type of fall of any nation throughout history, the capable flee first. And that's what's going to happen.
Just come down to Virginia, gentlemen.
If they'd have me, I'd be there.
I don't know. I think I might pick a more friendly to me and my family state than Virginia. It's, you're currently on the brink of another civil war with your government in that state.
Honestly,
you just come down to one of the counties outside of DC. Yeah, man. Come to a county outside of DC. We'll set you up.
I see it, you're not wrong, but at the same time, it's all about perspective because, I see a state of people that, understand the necessity of maintaining their rights and are willing to fight for it. At least they're willing to show up, which is more than we have here.
Half of success is showing up.
We have 2 million gun owners, and like we said before, we can't even get 100,000 to sign a petition. It's our only, which is our sort of our only legal option. We can't even get them to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, dudes brought a guillotine to the demonstration today.
Hey, I mean, that's what was it, like necessity is the mother of invention or something like that. I forget how that works. Yeah, it's the French hanging all those politicians was taking too long, so they had to come up with something better.
Marty's just getting all excited because of that one time the Dutch ate their prime minister.
There are options.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I consider you guys my brothers, so we'll just all play it by ear, and wherever it happens first. We used to say this on my podcast, but there's a reset button that's looming, and I do believe that. I mean, you just look at the trends, and it's just going to be a matter of what happens and when, and then how many of us are willing to come together and do our own thing and make something better out of it. So that's all it is.
I can see that. Let's find out where we can find everybody on the internet. We're going to start with Marty with a skill testing question. Marty, where can everyone find the show?
We value your opinions, so please visit canadianpatriotpodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@canadianpatriotpodcast.com and let us know what you think.
200 episodes. You're so good at this. Ian, where can everyone find you?
You can reach me by email at theislandretreat@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Sunday nights recording on Canadian Prepper Podcast, YouTube and iTunes, or YouTube and Facebook, I guess it is.
All right. Matt, do you have a social media presence, or maybe you want to plug the old podcasts?
Yeah, so I don't really do social media per se, but you can find we have a lot of back episodes we did a couple years worth of podcast episodes. International Liberty or Death Podcast. You can find us on Stitcher and iTunes and Facebook.com/Liberty or Death Podcast. It's relatively defunct now, but there's a lot of good shit in the back episodes, and you can actually see a lot of the stuff we I wouldn't say pontificated on, but a lot of the stuff we talked about and enumerate, like the trends that we were discussing. A lot of it started to play out. So check it out. You know, if you like it, you might not like it. It's I don't want to say edgy, but there's definitely a lot of inappropriateness in that podcast. So it's not for everybody. It's not for when your kids are in the car. But I do think there's a lot of value in checking it out. And, you know, these guys on CPP are our brothers. And, you know, we really like what they're doing. And so I think you'll like what we do. But like I said, it won't be for everybody, and it might not be for every time. But I think you should go check it out.
All right. If you've listened to the show this long, you deserve a discount at Ragnarok Tactical. Go to ragnaroktactical.ca. Use the discount code Patriot at checkout, and you'll save yourself some money. Firearms gear and accessories and body armor for the Boogaloo. You know, as long as it's still legal in the province in which you reside.
Keep your powder dry.
Yeah, right. I'm using that.